Yo, what's up everybody? Jumping here. Today I have a brand new Greatsword build for you guys in Monster Hunter World. They recently came out with the Spring Blossom event, and with that event we have access to a brand new Greatsword called the Wyvern's Ignition Impact Greatsword. And that thing is awesome. A lot of people are saying that it is the best Greatsword in the game, which I would say that it's definitely the best one for damage. There's no doubt it blows everything else out of the water. But the build that you can make for it, I don't know if the build is as good just because you're a little bit more limited on what you can do. But we'll talk about all that once we actually get there. The first thing I want to do is a damage test between the Great Jagras Greatsword and this brand new Wyvern's Impact Greatsword, just so you guys can see it for yourself. Now I have no buffs, no meal, nothing going on right now. It's just purely base damage. So let's try to do the test. Hopefully I can get a perfect charge here. I've been known to mess it up a lot. And remember, the pull is never a great way to really test damage because you never really know if you're going to actually hit real monsters for this damage. But it is still fun to hit the pull and test it out just to see what you can do exactly. Sometimes you might hit a monster for more damage, and sometimes you'll hit it for less. So 733 was the damage I got with the perfect charge. And I got 712 with a unperfect charge. So let me go ahead and switch over to the brand new weapon and we can see the damage on this one. And it should be actually pretty crazy. I was doing this earlier and it kind of blew me away on how much more damage this sword can actually do than the other one. Now I'm not going to be showing like certain things like pretty much the second charge and all that. 842 there. Let me go ahead and sharpen my weapon as well because my sharpness will go away. But one of the coolest things with this weapon is the white sharpness that you get, and you get it immediately. You don't actually have to put any handicraft on this weapon to get white sharpness, which is just absolutely epic. So I don't have focus 3, and that is kind of a problem. 888, and that was with the perfect charge. So you see what I'm saying? It's insane. It absolutely blows the Jagras out of the water. That's 150 more damage with this weapon than the Jagras. So now let's go ahead and check out this build. I'll go ahead and show it to you and tell you everything that you're going to need to know to go ahead and copy it. Alrighty guys, now before I actually talk about the new build, let me go ahead and talk a little bit about the Jagras build because this build is really good. And I would definitely say that this build is a lot better than the new build. Now, does it hit as hard? No, it doesn't. And that's what makes the new Greatsword so appealing. Now, the first thing I just want to show off here is the affinity. I have 45% affinity with this build, and with Weakness Exploit, if I hit that weak point, I have 95% affinity, which pretty much means that I'm always going to crit. It's really rare for me not to crit. And that, to me, is really important, especially with a slow weapon. Whenever I build up for a big attack and I land that big attack, I want that attack to crit because I actually did a lot more work to get it because it's a slow hitting weapon. So it's a real bummer if you don't actually have a lot of affinity because you're not going to crit as often. And there's going to be a lot of times with the new Greatsword where you're probably going to get your final big hit off and it's not going to crit. One of the problems with the new Greatsword is that it has negative affinity to start off. Now, you can counter that, but you're not probably going to get to 95% affinity. Now, one of my builds probably can get there, but the other one, no way. It ain't happening because you're going to need to use Expert Jewels and Critical Eye to get to 95% affinity again. So just keep that in mind. The other thing about this build is just everything I have on it. I have like pretty much everything on it because the Jagras Greatsword gives you 2 level 3 gem slots, which is just crazy. I mean, that is insane that you get 2 level 3 gem slots. And because of that, I mean, look what I have on this build. I have Focus, I have Maximum Might, I have Weakness Exploit, Critical Boost, 7 Attack Boost. I have everything. So that is just epic. And unfortunately, you just can't do this with the new Greatsword. The new Greatsword only has 2 level 1 gem slots on it. And the final thing about the Jagras is that this weapon has 3 augmentation slots. The new Greatsword only has 2 augmentation slots. And having 3 is really nice because you can get affinity, attack boost, health regain. Now you might not want to get health regain, but health regain is awesome because with a greatsword, anytime you do that final hit, you can pretty much restore all your health. I mean, it is insane. It will increase your survivability by a ton. You never need to heal if you have health regain on your greatsword build. But that's pretty much it for the Jagras build. Now we can talk about the new ones, but I did want to point this out that I personally do feel like the Jagras build is a lot better. But the weapon itself, in terms of damage, no way. The new one is way stronger. Okay, so for this first build, this build is all about crazy offense and hitting extremely hard. This is also the version of the build that's a little bit harder to mimic. Now with this build, I have 6 attack boosts, 3 critical boosts, 3 weakness exploit, 3 maximum might, 1 protective polish, and 1 non-elemental boost. Now you might notice there is no focus on this build. I had to sacrifice something because I don't have those 2 level 3 gem slots like I do with the Jagras. So I went ahead and got rid of focus. I don't think that focus is absolutely necessary for a greatsword build, but it is really nice to have. Now the other version of this build will have focus on it, but it's not going to have nearly as much offense. But that version of the build still will hit harder than the Jagras greatsword, so keep that in mind. The other thing you might notice is I don't have any handicraft. I don't think you need it for this build because this weapon automatically comes with white sharpness. So as long as you're using protective polish, you have no problem with your white sharpness. That will actually help you protect it. Now you might also notice I'm not using any speed sharpening because that will of course help for protecting your white sharpness if you have protective polish. I'm going to be showing you guys a trick that you can use so that you don't actually have to use speed sharpening on any of your white sharpness builds. It's actually a really, really cool little trick that I don't think a lot of people know about. Now for the augmentations, we only have 2 of them. I went for attack increase and health regain. Now your choices is attack and affinity and health regain, or attack and health regain. So it's up to you on which one you want. I definitely feel like if I can get more affinity, that would be nice, because with this build, we have the 3 maximum might. That's going to give us a positive affinity of 20%. Plus with weakness exploit, that's going to give us 50% whenever we hit a weak point. So that means that we have a 70% affinity whenever we hit a weak point. That's really good, but for a heavy weapon like this, you're going to not crit sometimes, and that's a real bummer. We also have the affinity booster, which of course will make us crit all the time, and that's good, but you're not always going to have the affinity booster. So just keep all that in mind. If you do go for the affinity on this weapon, that's going to give you an additional 10%, which is good. So it's up to you on which one you want, but I definitely do think the health regain is epic. Being able to restore pretty much all your health with your attacks is awesome. You never have to use a potion, and I really do love that a lot. Now for the necklace, we're using the Mighty Charm for 2 maximum might. For the helmet, we have the Dragon King eye patch for 2 weakness exploit. For the chest piece, we have the Doppler mail for 2 attack boost. For the gloves, we have the Kaiser gauntlets for 1 weakness exploit. And for the belt, we have the Nertigante coil for the 2 attack boosts. And for the boots, we have the Nertigante greaves for the 1 maximum might. Now for the decorations, we have 2 attack jewels in the weapon, 1 sharp jewel in the helmet, the elementless jewel in the chest piece, and we have 3 critical jewels. Now this is the reason why I think that this build is a little bit hard to mimic, is because we're using 3 critical jewels and we have the sharp jewel. I know that all those jewels can be kind of hard to get, but I do think a lot of people at this point, since the game has been out for so long, will probably have the 3 critical jewels and the sharp jewel. And also you have to have the 1 extra attack jewel, which is the jewel that everyone has trouble getting for sure. Now let me go ahead and show you guys this trick that you can do so that you do not need speed sharpening. And remember, this works with pretty much every white sharpness build, no matter if you're using handicraft or not. Normally what I like to do on a lot of builds is just go for the bare minimum of handicraft to get white sharpness. Then I will use protective polish to protect that white sharpness. Now what you can do is, there is an item in the game that you can easily get. All you gotta do is go fishing, and that is the wet fish fin. If you get this item, this will give you level 2 speed sharpening whenever you consume it. And it will sharpen your weapon, and you will only need to sharpen it twice, and you're done. So this is a really amazing item. There is a better version of this. If you can capture the great fish, you can get the wet fish fin plus, which will give you level 3 speed sharpening when you use it, and it has a chance to not actually consume the item, because that item is of course a lot harder to get because you have to find that big fish. But that is a really, really epic item. But these are really easy to get. You can farm a bunch of these, and whenever you're using a white sharpness build with protective polish, just go ahead and use this, and there you go. You have level 2 speed sharpening on your weapon, and you can pretty much use that in the middle of combat or whatever. So now let me go ahead and show you guys the next version of this build, which is a lot easier to actually copy and mimic. Now for this version of the build, we have 4 attack boost, 4 critical eye, 3 weakness exploit, 3 focus, 3 maximum might, 1 critical boost, 1 protective polish, and 1 non-elemental boost. Now one of the coolest things about this version of the build is that you probably can get 95% affinity on this build if you want it. Because of the critical eye and the maximum might, we can get up to 35% affinity, and if we actually went and got that augmentation for affinity, you can get 45% affinity all the time. And then with weakness exploit, that can boost it up to 95%, which is just epic. So that is an option that you have with this version of the build. But I will say that 35% is probably good enough, and with weakness exploit, that's 85%. So that's really cool. The other thing about this version of the build, although offensively it's not as good, this will still hit a lot harder than my Jagras build. My Jagras build can hit for 733. This version can hit for 788. And that's with the 1 critical boost, the 4 attack boost. That's crazy. Because that Jagras build, if you remember, it had 7 attack boosts, it had 3 critical boosts, and this build can still hit harder than that. And I know a lot of people say that 1 critical boost is not worth it. But for a Greatsword, I think it is. Because with 1 critical boost, that will up your damage by 30 points with that final hit. I think that's worth it. But if you don't have that decoration, you can always replace it with something else. Now, for this version of the build, everything is the same besides the chest piece and the gauntlets. We have the Damascus Mail for 2 focus and 3 level 1 gem slots. And we have the Diablos, that's the Black Diablos gauntlets for 1 focus, a level 2 gem slot, and a level 1 gem slot. Now the decorations are of course a lot different. We have 2 attack in the weapon still. We have the sharp in the helmet still. We have 4 expert jewels, 1 tenderizer jewel, 1 critical jewel, and 1 elementalist jewel. So that is the big difference. The expert jewels are very common. They're easy to get. I'm sure a lot of people have 4 expert jewels. The attack jewel, of course, is pretty rare. The sharp jewel is rare. The critical jewel is rare. And the elementalist jewel is really easy to get. So you can always switch this up if you don't have one of these decorations and use something else. But overall, this is definitely a lot easier to mimic than the last version of the build that I showed, which can be, of course, pretty hard to mimic if you don't have the critical jewels or the sharp jewel. And it's pretty much the same thing with this build as the last one. You could use that little trick with the wet fish fin, and if you do that, you can have no problem with your speed sharpening. Just use that item anytime you need to sharpen in the middle of combat, and you can get your white sharpness back, and you can protect it for about a minute because of that. Alrighty guys, well that's going to pretty much do it for this video. I really hope that you have enjoyed it and that it has helped. If it has, will you please like the video for me? Be sure to subscribe for future videos, and I really do hope that everyone has a very nice day, and peace out.